Hello and a very warm welcome to this latest edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is one of the most interesting figures in German soccer in recent years. And here she is in person, Katja Kraus.
Hello, guten Tag.
Thank you very much for joining us today, coming all the way from Hamburg to Berlin to be here on Talking Germany. Great stuff. Now, Katja Kraus has had an impressive career as a player, winning plenty of medals with her club FSV Frankfurt and playing in the German national team. Later, she broke new ground when she became the first female board member of one of Germany's top-flight Bundesliga clubs. And after all that, she wrote a much-discussed book, which we too will be discussing. But first of all, Katja, an interesting combination of things there. I'd like to talk about your playing days because you were a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah? And in Germany, as you know, people say that goalkeepers are eccentric people.
Yeah, das sagt man hier in
Yes, they say that in Germany, that goalkeepers and left wings are a bit crazy. I don't know why. It's not at all true in my case, but I've met a few where that's not so far from the truth.
Also ganz so weit weg ist es nicht.
Yeah, there are one or two goalkeepers in men's football. See, I don't know enough about women's football to really know which are the crazy ones in goal, but certainly in men's football there was like Sepp Maier and Jens Lehmann, yeah? Pretty eccentric guys, yeah? Why did you become a goalkeeper? I mean, how tall are you?
1,76
I'm -76. But don't ask about my weight.
Exactly, because you're very thin, you're very lithe.
Genau, man sagt in
Yes, that's just what they always say in Germany, that they put the fat ones in goal.
Die Dicken werden immer ins Tor gestellt.
Die Dicken, the fat ones?
Ja.
Oh dear, yeah. Why did you become a goalkeeper?
It grew over time.
Ich weiß gar nicht, ich glaube, diese Rolle
I don't know. I think this role suits me very well because I love team sports. I'm a team player through and through, but I do love the visibility associated with the goalkeeper's position. I especially like taking responsibility. I didn't know that when I started out, of course, but when I look back, I'd say the role was very well suited to my personality.
That's interesting, because when you are in goal, you're on your own.
Ja, das stimmt.
That's true. In some way you're on your own, even when you're part of a team. And I think I like the combination of those two aspects a lot.
Very interesting. You had a very successful playing career. It was back in the 80s, more or less, for the better part, yeah? There were lots of triumphs, lots of medals, lots of honours. What was the high point of that career for you?
The high point. As a young girl or boy, you always dream of being in a special situation, and that was the case with me. First, I played in the courtyard, but whenever I went to bed, I always imagined a special match with lots of spectators, and my team winning because I'd played especially well.
Dass die Mannschaft dann gewinnt, weil ich besonders gut gespielt habe. Also ein 1-0
A 1-0 is always a fantastic result for a goalkeeper because it means you didn't let in any goals, and it remains exciting till the end. And later, when I actually played a match like that, that was the DFB Cup final in Berlin in 1998, we beat the favourites 1-0. And it was a really good day for me. Later, I had a few bad ones, but that was really good. And it was the fulfillment of my childhood dream, so it was very special.
And that was where you began to think it's time now to sort of end my career, to hang up my boots.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the way it is with the book as well. And a few people have said it was quite good, so it's also time to stop writing.
Just tell me a little bit about, your big break later, where I've mentioned it already, becoming the first board member at a German soccer club, at a Bundesliga soccer club. That was a big deal.
You mean the end?
No, but the fact that you got this job.
Oh, the fact itself.
It was a huge, great big thing that was much talked about.
Yes, it was actually a big deal. I don't know how it is in Britain, whether in British soccer there's ever been a woman in management. Here in Germany, there had actually never been a woman in that position in a Bundesliga club before or after. For me, it wasn't as spectacular as it looked from outside, because I've always had something to do with soccer. It was always a central focus in my life. I love this sport, and my whole professional career is basically built on it. I went to university and was one of many thousands, but my passion was soccer. And the expertise I developed in it gave me the opportunity to fill a specific niche. That paved my professional way, and then everything else was inevitable.
Das hat dann meinen beruflichen Weg geebnet und dann war eigentlich alles ganz zwangsläufig.
Okay, that's interesting, but the reason I asked about it being a big deal was, I mean, it was a big deal because you got the job. It's an important job, no doubt about that. But it was also a big deal because you got the job as a woman. Yeah. And that means that what people were talking about was the differences between men and women. They were talking about gender questions, yeah? And that's very interesting because I found a quote from you where you said all these gender issues, and then you used a German word, you said, are langweilig. They're boring. Are they boring?
Yes,
I really did think that for a long time, because I was asked about it extremely often, even when I was playing women's soccer. The sports world is so full of stereotypes. I was always asked about it, even in my first position as spokeswoman for a Bundesliga club. Back then, it was much rarer for women to have anything to do with soccer. I was always confronted with that question, and at some point it actually began to bore me. Now I feel differently and take it much more seriously and don't find it boring anymore. Instead, I've understood, and have for several years, how important it is to work on getting women taken for granted in these positions, and all other leadership positions as well.
Tatsächlich daran zu arbeiten, dass Frauen in diesen Positionen irgendwann selbstverständlich sind, genauso selbstverständlich wie auf allen anderen Führungspositionen auch.
Okay. First impressions there from Katja Kraus. Here's more.
Katja Kraus, born in Offenbach in 1970. She developed a passion that was unusual for a girl at the time: soccer. The goalkeeper helped Frankfurt win 3 German championships and 4 cup titles. She played 7 times for the German national team. At 28, she was press spokeswoman for the Eintracht Frankfurt men's team in the Bundesliga. In 2003, Katja Kraus became the most highly placed woman in professional soccer, the first female board member of a Bundesliga club, Hamburg, in charge of marketing and communication. Her contract was terminated in 2011. She dealt with that setback by writing a book. And today she's our guest on Talking Germany, Katja Kraus.
I was just saying, Katja, that everything you've done, really, very, very young, you had a lot of success.
Ja, ich habe tatsächlich, ich mag tatsächlich
Yes, I actually have. I really love speed and doing things fast. Maybe you can also see that in my personal career. But it's also important to say at various points, now comes another phase, and actually be prepared to allow other steps and developments.
Schritte zu gehen und Bewegung zuzulassen.
Okay, when you talk about steps, let's go back to your very first step. You mentioned earlier playing football in the yard, in the street, near your house. Take us back there. Tell us what happened back then.
Ja, ich habe einen besten Freund gehabt.
I had a best friend when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, whom I wanted to marry. I didn't do that later. But the way things go, he loved to play football, and I wanted to play other games. But he always said to me, first we'll play football and then hide and seek. So I'd stand in front of the garage door for hours, and he'd shoot goals against it. And it was always very loud. You know how loud it is when a ball hits a garage door. And the neighbours complained. And all that complaining got on my nerves. So I developed an ambition not to let the ball hit the garage door, and developed a talent for goalkeeping. And I ended up joining a football club, and my friend Bert didn't. He kept playing alone in the yard. That's how it all began.
Hat weiter auf dem Hof gespielt, dann allein. Aber daraus hat sich das alles entwickelt.
Okay, and by the time you were 16 already, you were playing in goal for one of what was at the time then, this was before the German Women's Bundesliga had started, I think.
Ja, genau.
But you were playing in one of the top teams in goal. Yeah. What did your girlfriends say about that? Because this was the early days of women's football in Germany.
Ja, das war damals
Yes, back then it was really exotic. Not many girls played football. Girls found it stranger than boys did, actually. The boys thought it was great because they could always talk about soccer with me. The other girls didn't think it was that great. But I felt comfortable with the whole situation.
It's interesting that you say that because I have a daughter who plays an awful lot of football as well, and she's very respected by the boys, I know, because she talks about football and she plays really pretty good football. Yeah. What did your parents say?
My parents didn't care much about football, and at the time they didn't think it was a very good idea for their daughter to play the game. They imagined I'd do something more conformist. I think dance or even playing handball would have been more to their taste. They weren't very pleased that I played football.
Sounds like a conflict.
Yes,
it was a conflict. In order to play on a women's team in the senior division, I had to change to a club that was 20 kilometres away, because there weren't women's clubs everywhere back then. And my parents thought it would end there, because they simply said, "We're not going to drive you." They underestimated my willpower. I always got there somehow, on a bicycle or bus or even worse, but in any case, I got my way.
Aber ich habe in jedem Fall dann meinen Willen durchgesetzt.
It's quite interesting. I've got a person sitting in front of me who I know is really very ambitious and has a very strong will. These two things are most apparent. While all this was happening, your young soccer playing career, you went off to university and started studying. Yeah? What did you study?
I did German studies and political science, and that was also during that time. I've had a lot of good luck in my life, and I think that's part of what led to my success. I've always done what I wanted to do. I had my sport, I'm interested in politics and language. Communication is always close to my heart. Basically, I've always been able to do what I most wanted to do, even professionally, and that hasn't changed.
Das hat bis heute sich nicht geändert.
But tell me, I mean, you're saying you could always do what you wanted to do, but when you went to Frankfurt to become press, what do you say? Do you say spokesperson, spokeswoman, or
press spokeswoman?
Okay, so press spokeswoman. You went to Hamburg to be a board member. There must have been resistance there. There must have been quite strong, firm, and vocal resistance to who you are and what you represent, simply as a woman.
Yes, it really is true that, especially when I first became a press spokeswoman, there was quite a lot of opposition. I hadn't thought about it at all before. I'm the kind of person who goes into the woods and only then realizes it's dark. I don't think about it in advance. And that led to my taking on that job without having imagined how immense the opposition would be. When I experienced it, I was shocked. I had a few tearful nights. But that motivated me to do the job even better, so they couldn't target me. And that led to the next step. And later, when I got onto the board, that was even more spectacular. But hierarchy also provides a protective shield. As a board member, I didn't sense any personal opposition to me anymore. There may have been some, but I never encountered it personally.
Okay. But there came an end to your career at Hamburg. I think it was quite painful for you. We'll have to talk about that in just a second. OK, Katja, we're going to talk about your book now. I mentioned it, a book that features 3 words: power and success and failure. And for me, when I look at Sven Hannawald, and we were just saying now that a lot of the ski jumpers, they really do look as though they're under a lot of pressure. It's a very, very tough existence. What was your encounter with him like?
Also ich habe ihn auch tatsächlich so erlebt, also unter einem totalen Druck.
I actually saw him as being under huge pressure. And what's astonishing, especially among ski jumpers, is that they strive for extreme perfection, because they're really solely responsible for their result. It's different with ski racers. There you can say a ski was bad. With ski jumpers, you can't. Really, in the end, the result is a product of your own performance. The competition is enormous, and that makes the pressure so high.
And did you feel, when you met Sven Hannawald, did you feel this sense of pain that I feel as though I felt when I was watching that report?
Ja, ich konnte natürlich sieht man das schon,
of course. You see that when you look at his body.
Wenn jetzt natürlich etwas schwerer
Because even if he may have gained a bit of weight after ending his career, as an athlete, his body is subject to a lot of attention, his weight and nutrition. And you can see by his personality that he's someone who's really learned to cope with intense pressure.
Dass ein Mensch ist, der wirklich sehr intensiv mit Druck umzugehen gelernt hat.
That's a tough lesson to have to learn in life.
Das ist vor allem deshalb so schwierig, weil diese
It's
Menschen,
especially tough because these people, the athletes we're talking about, are in their formative years. They're very young.
Aren't they? They're really young. And I mean, quite often sports people these days, when I look at Bundesliga soccer players, some of them when they're 25 years old, I feel as though I'm younger sometimes. It's an amazing feeling. Yeah?
Das ist so, und das ist so. Ich habe mich oft
That's true.
Fußballspieler.
I've often asked myself, little boys all want to be professional soccer players. They collect autographs and all want to play on their favourite teams. That's every child's dream. Then when they're sitting in the dressing room, you can't see their enthusiasm anymore. They're happy and light-hearted after a win, of course, but otherwise you sense a lot of strain. And I've always asked myself why that is, and I think it's really down to pressure, the permanent competition. Even a team has lots of competition within it, and there are a lot of athletes who really can't deal with that pressure.
We're talking about pressure, we're talking about winning, and we're talking about losing, yeah? And just before that report, I mentioned in passing the fact that you were voted out at Hamburg. It's not really worth talking about the details. It had a lot to do with intrigue and with sort of internal matters at Hamburg Football Club. But I did say to you, I said, it was a very painful experience for you. And you looked at me.
Ja,
express that pain for me. Tell me about it.
Ja, es ist natürlich schmerzhaft.
Yes, of course. Painful is the right word because you really feel physical pain. It's a situation in which you're no longer master of your own fate. We all know that from situations of rejection, being fired. Those simply aren't pleasant situations, especially when you lose a task that's part of your life. Emptiness replaces it.
Oder hergeben muss, die wirklich ein Lebensinhalt ist, dann tritt erstmal eine Leere an diese Stelle. Und das hat tatsächlich
Some people actually become ill. Psychological or other disorders take its place. That didn't happen to me.
Because you wrote the book?
Because I really had the good luck to find something that fulfilled me very quickly. Right after I stepped down, I started to write this book. Though that doesn't mean I hadn't dealt with what had happened.
Just to interrupt you, I mean, what fascinates me so much is that you're in this situation where you're feeling hurt, you're feeling perhaps humiliated, intellectually, in your soul, in your body, you just said. And then you have this great idea to write a book. You've never written a book before. Good grief, what's going on there?
Yeah?
How did you know you could write the book?
Ich habe das nicht gewusst.
I didn't know. I didn't know I could write. But I had a subject and the idea of writing a book for a long time. And I also had a strong desire to deal closely with the subject again, because this football business is hysterical and highly charged. You act swiftly, make decisions, and you're driven to a great extent. And I wanted so much to get involved with people, with subjects and a challenge. That's why every evening, after a second glass of red wine, I had a burning desire to write a book. And when I was able to do it, it was immediately clear I would do it. I started it 2 days after I left the club. And what was very fortunate was that, like many people I interviewed for my book, I'd found something that fulfilled me just as much as what I'd done before. Because you don't lose status, riches and publicity like many people think. You lose your life's work, its contents and intensity. People are good and successful at what they do because they like to do it.
But there's another aspect to the story that you are telling about yourself, the story that you are telling in the book, because I have a quote from you, because the book is about Macht. It's about power, yeah? And you say, when you lose power, you become a better person.
I don't
know if you become a better person. In my book, Ron Sommer, former head of Deutsche Telekom, says you don't become a better person, you become more of a person. And I really believe that, because with power and visibility, walls are also built up, very high ones, from outside. A lot about your role is interpreted from outside, and also by staff members who surround you when you're in such a role. Then you inevitably lose touch with reality.
Zwangsläufig nicht mehr so wirklich in Berührung mit der Realität.
Just give me a very, very quick answer to this question. Are you a better person than you were 5 years ago?
No, I was already a good person before.
Good. Good answer, yeah. Best in Europe again. Again is the word. You were watching the final?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Yes. But I was always sure Germany would win.
It was a close thing, though, on the day, yeah? And it's quite interesting that she managed to save 2 penalties, yeah?
That's true, although neither of them should have been allowed. The referee didn't have a very good day. But I found the German team really was the better one. What made a difference between this tournament and many previous ones, where the German team clearly dominated play, was that their attack wasn't very effective. Usually the German national team made many more goals and decided matches much earlier. That's why it was much closer in this tournament. But I still think they were the better team.
Yeah. Although, of course, I do have to mention Anja Mittag, who scored the winning goal in the match, and she is a former Talking Germany guest, just like yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Right, there you go, yeah.
Nadine,
sorry?
She's now playing in Sweden.
Exactly, yeah. It was a good goal that she scored in the final. Nadine Angerer, she's an interesting personality. She's quite tough, yeah?
Yeah.
You know her, you know her.
Yes, we played together for a few weeks. She's actually a very interesting woman, because she's used soccer to get to know other aspects of life. She's played in all sorts of different countries and really is a very interesting character, but she's also a very good goalkeeper.
And she is 34 years old, I think, which means that she's getting on towards the end of her career. Yeah? Has she spoken to you about sort of what you do next? Because it's an important, as we've discovered, you know, either you're in or you're out in sport very often. Either you're a success or you're something else. Yeah? What's going to happen to her now?
I think she's going to keep playing for a while. She's just changed to New Zealand or Australia.
Okay. 6 European Championships in a row. Why is Germany so good?
It's actually partly due to the fact that in Germany and the DFB, women's soccer is taken seriously, even if recognition has come a bit late. Especially in the past few years, the former president, Theo Zwanziger, made a huge contribution to women's soccer. And you can see that from the truly excellent training in the women's national team compared to other nations. Their women's soccer is good whenever the men's game isn't that strong. In Germany, the DFB realized relatively early on that it shouldn't support only men, and when looking at its membership numbers, it's good to have girls who have prospects of playing soccer.
One thing that I notice, I understand how popular football is in Germany because my daughter plays and because I'm very, very involved in it, and I watch quite a lot of women's football. Nevertheless, I hear very often from men who I bump into, but from other journalists and what have you, that men, they still mock women's soccer. Do you understand that? What's your reaction?
Of course I understand it when you compare it to men's soccer. It's just a different sport. It's less athletic. It's not as fast. There's not that passing precision. It's a completely different game. And when we look at what games other than soccer attract interest, with the exception of highlights, such as the handball championships, people watch this. But there's no everyday team sport that fascinates people in Germany the way men's soccer does.
It's interesting, though, that you say what you say about women being a little bit less athletic and a little bit slower than men. It was I sat down recently with a friend of mine and we watched the whole 90 minutes of the 1966 World Cup final, the famous one when England last won a significant football game against Germany, of course. Yeah?
They haven't won anything for so long that you always have to watch it.
Although the friend was a German, I have to say, yeah. But what was interesting is we were watching these guys playing, and we were watching how, you know, there's Franz Beckenbauer out there, and we were watching how slowly they moved. And he said to me, do you know, this is about the pace that women play football at now.
Ja, das würde ich jetzt nicht sagen.
I wouldn't say that. I do think it's faster. I sometimes watch it, and whenever I do, I think it's great when the flankers get into the penalty area and I can count to 10 or 20. That was really different. I've never experienced that. I do think there's a difference, and it hasn't lessened, because men's soccer has also developed so quickly in the past few years.
Yeah. Do women play football differently from men?
Ja,
yes, clearly.
Oh, tell me how.
Also, das Spiel ist sehr viel weniger theatralisch.
The game is much less theatrical. Women actually try to play efficient football. They play more team football. Men place much more emphasis on individuality and individual expertise, even though that's changing now.
Aber setzen sehr viel stärker noch auf Individualität, auf individuelle Kompetenz.
Women try to play with each other, and I think they're better at choosing a simple and effective move over a spectacular one.
Den spektakulären zu versuchen.
Okay, so women, there's more solidarity between caring and sharing women. That's interesting. More of a team game. Are there nasty players in women's football? Aggressive players who go out to hurt other players?
Nein.
No.
Nein.
Doesn't exist.
There are probably individual incidents, but basically women's football isn't such an aggressive sport.
Nicht so ein aggressiver Sport, nein.
Do you still play football these days?
Nein.
Never ever? You don't have a ball in the cupboard?
Doch.
But it's flat.
Ja.
How do you keep fit?
I run every
Ich laufe
day.
jeden Tag.
Every day?
Every day.
Every day? When was the last time you missed a day?
Ja, das ist lange
That
her.
was a long time ago.
Ich kann das an
I can
meiner
always
Laune
tell by
immer
my
erkennen.
mood.
Good one. Katja, what's your analysis? What's your analysis of what you've been seeing so far in the streets of Hamburg or the streets of Berlin, indeed, in the last couple of weeks?
Ja, ich sehe eine Menge
I've been
Plakate
seeing
auch,
lots of posters,
eine Menge mehr
many more
als
than are
es
necessary,
braucht,
I
glaube
think.
ich. Aber also ich mache meine
I don't let them
Wahlentscheidung
influence my
davon
voting
nicht
choices.
abhängig, aber
But
wenn
if the
die
large
Vielzahl
number
der
of posters
Plakate
makes
dazu
people
führt,
aware
die
that an
Menschen darauf
important
aufmerksam
decision
zu
will
machen,
soon
dass
be
hier
made here
bedeutende
with the federal elections,
bei den Bundestagswahl
they've
stattfindet,
fulfilled their
dann
purpose.
haben sie einen
Otherwise, I
Zweck
don't discern much in them.
nicht so viel erkennen.
Did you? I mean, you've been looking at the posters that have been around you. Yeah. What has stuck with you? What have you remembered? What message?
I actually remember seeing fewer slogans than faces. Faces that don't have much to do with reality. Perhaps that's why.
Von daher, also ich
You mean because they've been polished up?
Genau.
Exactly.
Also ich gucke tatsächlich meistens darüber.
I really
Aber
usually ignore
natürlich,
them.
Ich habe auch ein profundes Politik.
But of course, I have a profound interest in politics, and I base my voting decisions on election platforms. But I think it's necessary to use every means of communication to make people aware that an important election is taking place, because it hasn't penetrated people's consciousness as much as it should. And there are still lots of people who haven't decided yet on whether they'll go to the polls at all. And maybe they'll decide to do so if they've stumbled across a poster or so.
Are you an undecided voter, or have you made your mind up already?
I've already cast my vote.
You are? Oh, okay, okay. It's interesting, I've mentioned my daughter already, I'm going to mention my son now. I said to my son the other evening, I said, what, you know, because I was trying to find out what his impression is, a young person, he's 21 years old. I said, all these posters and placards around Berlin, are they having much of an impression on you? And he said, I'm asking you as a communications expert here now, he said, you know, if I were running a party, what I would do is I would have no posters, no placards, because it would save me the money and people would talk about you. What do you think about that?
Das weiß ich nicht, was.
I don't know if that would really work.
Ich glaube einfach, dass es
I think it's become important that it's not just posters, but that the political parties now have a broad range of ways to communicate. I also think it would sometimes be better to do without one or two of them and communicate more purely and clearly instead of using the approach the more the better. I don't believe in that. I think it's about placing targeted emphasis in the right place But I also believe an escalation has taken place, because each party wants to get more than the others and put up a poster so nobody else will use the space. So the parties egg each other on, the way the media do in other areas.
You work a lot in communications, you work a lot in marketing, and the media are an aspect of all that. Have you actually done sort of media training for how to be in situations like this situation?
I haven't really specially prepared myself for this. I should have, but no. I haven't done it for a long time, though I used to.
And what did they teach you to do with your hands? I'm not saying that you're not doing the right thing with your hands. I'm just curious to hear what, you know...
Obviously nothing, or at least I don't remember. What you do with your hands is important, but I don't think you should do this.
No, really?
No, I actually did it more often at the beginning of my career, and other players did it too.
It's interesting for you that you're saying this, more or less, isn't what you should not do. Who do you think of when I do this? No?
That's what the Chancellor does, doesn't she?
Exactly. I'm thinking, let's have a look at because I think we've got a photo here, or a couple of photos there. Just look at that. This is here in the heart of Berlin, yeah? These are Angela Merkel's hands. And can you read the sign off to the left there, Katja?
Germany's future in good hands.
Yeah, Germany's future in good hands. That's quite interesting. Is that a good message for you? I mean, it's 3,000 square metres.
In any case, that hand position is a unique selling point.
Yeah. I think it's worth it for that alone. It's quite interesting because in the media outside Germany, when you listen to people talking about Angela Merkel, the reporters from Germany, they say that what people most like about Angela Merkel is that she is, in politics and in the economic crisis, a safe pair of hands for Germany. So that's maybe a very good image. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Might win her some votes. We like to ask our guests to bring along a prized possession, a cherished possession with them. Yeah? What do you have?
I've brought along my ballpoint pen because it represents a very decisive phase of my life, writing this book. With it, I started writing, and not just writing, because also in this phase, which as a new life was very unsteady and uncertain, I kept a tight hold on it.
Can I have a go? Yeah. So this was the pen that you actually... It's a real ballpoint pen. I don't know. Yeah. It's quite small. Yeah. It's a lady's pen.
I'd say a woman's pen. I have very small hands.
So when you're writing, do you write by hand always, and then put it into the computer afterwards? Or?
Always first, yes.
What are you doing now?
Writing. I've been on the road with this book, giving readings, and I think it's just wonderful. I'm working on a second book. I'm managing director of a small agency, Jung von Matt Sport, and I'm very happy. I want to keep writing.
And your new book, yeah, what's it going to be about? I know you're not going to tell me a title, or I know you're not going to tell me this is the project. Give us a clue, though. Give us a feel for what it might be about.
It'll also be non-fiction, on a subject that's very close to my heart, and to write it, I'll again be able to talk with very interesting people.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you one last question. It's very interesting that the person I'm seeing in front of me is a person who's very good, I think, at designing a life, at seeing goals in the future, realising those goals. Yeah, that's how I see you from your very early days. Do you have a dream for the future? Where do you see yourself going?
No. I've told you I dreamed of playing soccer. And honestly, I dreamed about writing a book sometime and doing readings from it. And I've been able to do both. That's terrific. It's a very nice balance. And I don't have a goal right now. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing now and want my life to stay just the way it feels right now.
she said with a very big smile. Wonderful. Let's move on to the Talking Germany quiz, the traditional quiz at the end of the show. Yeah, I'll give you one alternatives.
Is das etwas Deutsches?
Is that something German, a quiz? I thought we were imitating the English.
No, okay.
Let's do it anyway.
OK. In the world of football, are you an insider or an outsider?
Insider.
Are you more a loner or a team player?
Team player.
Would you rather watch men's soccer or women's soccer?
Men's soccer.
Who's your favourite soccer player of all time?
Zinedine Zidane.
Ah, good choice. We'll leave it there, yeah? That's your lot with the charming, the thought-provoking Katja Kraus. There's more Talking Germany, including my blog, on our archive, on our website. Have a look at that. If you've enjoyed her company as much as I have, come back next week. Bye-bye.